Have you ever wondered why some touches linger in your memory long after they happen, while others vanish like whispers in the wind? It's not just about the physical sensation. There's something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface, that makes certain moments irresistible and unforgettable. Today, we're diving into that mysterious space where connection and desire intertwine, inspired by insights from one of the greatest minds who explored the depths of the human psyche. Imagine this. A quiet evening in a cozy apartment in Brooklyn. The soft hum of city life filters through the window. Sarah, a graphic designer in her late 20s, is sitting across from her partner. The room smells faintly of chamomile tea and worn leather from an old armchair. She reaches out and lightly brushes her partner's hand, a touch so simple yet charged with meaning that it shifts the atmosphere completely. What happened in that moment wasn't magic or chemistry alone. It was a subtle dance between unconscious needs and conscious openness. What if I told you there's a way to understand why certain touches call out for more, beckoning closeness and emotional depth? And better yet, what if you could learn to cultivate those moments on purpose? Not by following clichés or scripts but by tapping into something that Carl Jung explored deeply, the dialogue between our outer actions and inner archetypes. Let's start with a question. What does a touch really do beyond skin contact? It signals safety, invitation, vulnerability, or sometimes challenge. But how do you know which it is? And how can you make your touch be the kind that invites not just physical connection but emotional craving? This isn't about manipulation or tricks, far from it. It's about authenticity rooted in self-awareness, about meeting yourself and the other person in a way that awakens longing naturally. To unpack this idea, we'll look closely at one fundamental concept Jung worked with: the anima and animus. In simple terms, these are parts of our psyche representing qualities traditionally seen as feminine or masculine but more accurately embodying our inner emotional life and projections onto others. When two people connect, these inner figures resonate or clash beneath everyday interactions, including touch. For example, Sarah often felt puzzled why gentle touches sometimes left her partner distant rather than drawn closer. One night, after a tiring day juggling freelance deadlines and family calls from Chicago, she decided to experiment with something new, not just touching softly but bringing intention to her movement. She recalled reading about how inviting presence matters more than pressure or technique. Instead of just brushing his arm absent-mindedly while scrolling on her phone, which honestly happens way too often, she looked him in the eye first, pausing, and then let her fingertips linger gently at his wrist with a slight warmth as if saying without words, "I see you here, I want this moment." The effect surprised her. He relaxed visibly, his usual guarded posture softened. Later he said he felt more connected than in weeks. Why? Because Sarah tapped into an unspoken conversation between their inner selves, the anima speaking through her tender attentiveness. But here's where things get interesting. Many try similar touches without much effect because they miss what Jung might call recognition. The anima or animus needs to feel acknowledged, not overwhelmed nor ignored. So how can you bring this alive practically? Try this tonight or whenever you share space with someone close. Before any touch, take one full breath together. Yes, deliberately synchronize breathing even if awkward at first. This small act forms a tiny bridge between two separate worlds inside you both. Then reach out slowly, but don't rush. Notice if your own hand feels tense or hesitant. Soften it deliberately as though melting ice rather than grabbing something hard. Place your palm lightly on their forearm, or wherever feels natural. Hold for 3 seconds longer than feels comfortable at first. It might feel odd or vulnerable. That's precisely why it works. If possible, keep eye contact gentle but present throughout. No need to stare like detectives but enough so they sense your full attention beyond surface gesture. This exercise does two things at once. Invites conscious awareness into what usually happens unconsciously, and activates those deep archetypal figures without forcing them. Now, before moving forward, if you find this approach resonates even a little bit, that subtle power behind intentional presence, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel because we'll explore more ways to deepen connections beyond clichés and scripts as we go along. You may wonder why such small details matter so much. Well, when Jung spoke about these inner figures manifesting outwardly, he didn't mean rigid roles but living patterns shaping how we experience love and intimacy daily, even when we think we're just being ourselves. The nuance here is subtle but profound. When your touch aligns with genuine emotional invitation, not obligation or habit, it speaks directly to those inner layers longing for recognition. Sometimes I think about how easy it is to fall into autopilot. Touches become routine pats on the back instead of invitations to closeness. That reminds me of Jason, a software developer I met during a workshop last year, who confessed his girlfriend often felt distant despite his efforts because he never stopped to check if his gestures carried real feeling underneath fatigue and stress. Jason started trying this breathing and touch exercise over Zoom calls while working remotely during 2023 winter when they lived apart due to travel restrictions. At first laughably awkward, who knew breathing could be so tricky? But gradually it shifted their tone. Touch transformed from mechanical routine into something almost magnetic despite miles between them. So maybe next time you're tempted to reach out casually, or worried that your efforts fall flat, you pause instead for that shared breath first. The power isn't just in what your fingers do but how your whole presence says silently, "I'm here fully for you." That shift changes everything because it moves beyond physical contact into emotional resonance, a language our bodies speak fluently once invited. Try noticing afterward how your partner responds, not only physically but emotionally. Do they lean in more? Do their eyes soften? Does tension melt away? Even if results aren't instant fireworks, spoiler alert. Relationships rarely work like blockbuster movies. This practice plants seeds for ongoing attunement, building trust layered deep beneath surface interactions where genuine desire grows quietly but surely. And yes, I'm aware this sounds almost too simple compared with all the advice shouting at us online about seduction hacks or grand romantic gestures designed for likes rather than lasting bonds. But simplicity grounded in true presence has its own weight. In fact, Jung might say it holds unconscious wisdom waiting patiently beneath noise of modern life. There's also irony here, because many strive so hard trying to impress or dazzle that they miss these quiet moments entirely, and yes, I've been guilty too. So consider giving yourself permission tonight not to perform but simply be, to let touch carry meaning through patience and care rather than expectation or speed. Before closing this part, if you're curious about going deeper into how these unconscious patterns shape not only love but identity itself, stick around. Upcoming videos explore related themes with fresh perspectives rooted firmly in lived human experience rather than abstract theory alone. For now though, try this breathing touch exercise with someone close, or even alone on your own arm, to awaken senses dulled by routine life rhythms. Notice sensations fully. The temperature shifts under your palm. Heartbeat changes slightly when attention focuses inward and outward simultaneously. It's oddly grounding, almost like meeting an old friend previously unnoticed inside yourself mirrored back through another person's skin contact. And hey, if things feel strange at first, don't worry. That awkwardness signals growth beginning somewhere unfamiliar but worthwhile. A sign you're pushing beyond habits toward authentic connection which ultimately fuels desire far richer than any scripted moves ever could. With that said, I'm eager to hear if this approach sparks anything for you. Comment below what shifted, or didn't, and let's learn together because connection isn't a one-way street. It evolves through shared attention and willingness to listen beyond words too often overlooked in daily rushes. Alright. That's enough for now before I get too carried away reflecting on touch as subtle dialogue between souls, or psyche parts. In our next part we'll explore why vulnerability plays a starring role here, not just soft openness but embracing uncertainty itself, as paradoxical as that sounds. Until then remember, sometimes all it takes is one thoughtful breath before reaching out again, and suddenly everything changes. So, we left off with that idea of breathing together before a touch, making space for presence and invitation. But what happens when even the most mindful gestures run into invisible walls? When the other person pulls back or seems unreachable despite your best efforts? It's frustrating, like knocking on a door that won't open, no matter how gently you knock. This leads us to another layer that often gets ignored: the unconscious defenses we carry around intimacy, especially physical closeness. These aren't just psychological jargon. They're real patterns embedded in our early experiences and relationships. Think of them as emotional armor developed to protect fragile parts of ourselves, sometimes so well crafted that they block even the warmest touch. I remember talking to Elena, a nurse living in downtown Seattle who shared a story that stuck with me. She described how her boyfriend would flinch slightly whenever she tried to hold his hand in public. At first, she thought he was just shy or awkward, but as days passed, it became clear that something deeper was at play. What Elena didn't know was that her boyfriend had grown up in a household where affection was scarce and physical contact often came with strings attached, approval or punishment. His psyche had learned to interpret touch not as comfort but as threat or obligation. No wonder he recoiled subtly when she tried to bridge the distance. Here's the catch. If you don't understand these hidden reactions, it's easy to misinterpret them as rejection or lack of love. But often, they're cries for safety beneath the surface. A reminder that true closeness requires patience with more than just skin. It needs time for those armored parts to loosen their grip. So what can you do when your touch meets this kind of resistance? One practical approach is what I call the slow invitation. Instead of initiating touch abruptly, even with good intention, try creating a non-threatening environment first by focusing on shared experience rather than direct contact. For example, imagine sitting side by side quietly reading or watching a movie. You might casually let your knees brush together or your shoulders lightly lean in, not yet full contact but gentle reminders that you're there and available. Then observe. Does your partner relax gradually? Do subtle signals shift? The way their breathing deepens or their gaze softens? If yes, then after some time, could be minutes or even days depending on comfort, try extending your hands slowly toward theirs without forcing completion. You might only get fingertip touches at first, and that's perfectly fine. The key is honoring pace while maintaining openness without pressure or expectation. Try this over several encounters and notice the difference compared to jumping straight into holding hands or hugs. You'd be surprised how much power lies in these small, tentative steps. They allow defenses to lower organically rather than being overwhelmed suddenly. The exercise goes like this. Next time you share space with someone sensitive to touch, or even on your own when you feel guarded, create moments of quiet proximity without immediate contact. Feel presence without performance. Allow connection to unfold naturally as tension eases. This practice cultivates attunement not only physically but emotionally. It teaches patience with vulnerability's pace rather than rushing toward intimacy prematurely, which ironically can trigger withdrawal. Switching gears now but staying within this theme of connection through touch brings us to a third concept crucial for deep resonance: anticipation shaped by imagination and emotional context. It sounds complicated, but think about those moments when a simple touch feels electric, not because it's intense physically, but because there's an unspoken story behind it teasing your mind before contact happens. Picture this. In February 2024, Mia and Lucas lived together in Chicago. They've been dating for 2 years but recently found themselves caught in routine. Weekends blurred into similar scripts. Affection predictable like clockwork rather than spontaneous spark. One evening Mia tries something different, not just reaching out but weaving anticipation through subtle gestures beforehand. A glance across the room paired with a teasing smile. Leaving a faint scent of lavender on her wrist. Sending texts earlier hinting at an upcoming surprise hug later. When she finally reaches Lucas's arms softly during dinner preparation, he turns toward her with an expectant smile like he's been waiting all day for this moment, even though nothing dramatic happened yet. Why did this work? Because anticipation itself ignites desire by activating inner narratives. Those stories we tell ourselves about safety, attraction, and belonging. Jung might say these narratives link closely with archetypal patterns internalized from cultural myths and personal history. Meanings layered beneath every gesture waiting silently to be recognized and fulfilled. Here comes the practical part. How do you cultivate anticipation beyond cliché teasing? Start by tuning into sensory details linked with emotional memories meaningful for both parties. Perhaps shared favorite scents, textures, sounds associated with comfort or excitement. Then experiment by sprinkling hints throughout your time together. A brief touch on the back while passing by, leaving small notes reminding them you're thinking about them. Adjusting lighting subtly to create cozy ambiance before physical contact begins. All designed not as manipulation but invitations inviting imagination and curiosity alive again inside mundane moments. An exercise could be crafting your own anticipation ritual based on these elements. First, pick one sensory detail meaningful for both people. A smell like vanilla or pine? A sound like soft music? Then incorporate it consciously before any intentional touch. For example, applying lotion scented lightly before sitting close together or playing favorite songs softly while brushing hair away from face gently afterward. Notice how layering these tiny cues changes mood without words needing to explain everything explicitly. It taps into deeper emotional channels connecting body and mind through symbolism embodied in everyday life. I recall once trying something similar during a reunion weekend with friends in San Francisco last spring 2023. Just light touches combined with shared laughter over old stories created warmth radiating far beyond physical sensations alone. That kind of resonance is rare yet accessible if cultivated thoughtfully over time instead of rushed through frantic schedules demanding instant gratification constantly pushed by social media feeds saturating our lives today. And speaking of modern times, I find it ironic how quickly technology offers constant stimuli but simultaneously dulls sensitivity towards slow-building connection vital for human intimacy. This paradox makes conscious attention toward anticipation rituals not just charming extras but essential tools restoring richness lost amid digital noise crowding inner space needed for genuine encounter. To sum up this part loosely, because I promised no neat summaries, slow invitation through proximity without pressure helps dismantle defenses wrapped around vulnerability. Anticipation fueled by sensory storytelling reawakens desire beyond mere physical mechanics. And both work hand in hand, nurturing connection cultivated patiently yet powerfully beneath surface interactions habitual today tend to overlook hurriedly chasing superficial thrills instead. Before moving forward, I want you to try blending these ideas yourself. Next time you're with someone dear, or even alone exploring self-touch, pause after shared breath exercise we talked about earlier and invite slow proximity without immediate contact. Then sprinkle subtle sensory cues aligned with meaningful memories, creating anticipation naturally building momentum underneath conscious awareness. Notice shifts within yourself and others. How barriers soften incrementally, making room for richer connection unfolding gently yet deeply rooted inside psyche, layers shaped by experience, collective yet intensely personal simultaneously. Oh, and if this resonates at all, maybe share below one tiny sensory detail that sparks positive feelings when linked unconsciously with affection from your life. I'd love hearing those little treasures reflecting uniqueness every person carries under skin, waiting patiently till invited forth. Anyway, enough brain gymnastics for now. Up next we'll explore vulnerability's paradoxical role, that strange mix of fear and courage fueling desire itself. Not just openness but embracing uncertainty wrapped tightly inside longing's core. But until then, remember, sometimes holding back gently opens doors wider than rushing forward ever could. There's a subtle thread running through all the things we've touched on so far, pun intended, that I haven't named yet but is perhaps the most elusive and powerful of all. The art of attuning not just to another person's body, but to their rhythm, the invisible pulse beneath every interaction. This rhythm isn't just about timing or physical movement. It's an emotional and energetic cadence that, when caught, creates a flow between two people that feels effortless yet charged. Jung might have hinted at this in his writings on synchronicity, not mere coincidence but meaningful alignment beyond logic. Let me take you back to a cool spring evening last year in Portland where I met Derek and Lila, a couple who seemed ordinary at first glance but told me something extraordinary about touch and connection. Derek was a jazz musician whose music thrived on improvisation and flow, while Lila worked as an architect, meticulous and structured. Their relationship had been rocky because Derek sometimes felt smothered by Lila's need for plans and schedules, while she felt adrift in his spontaneous world. They struggled especially with physical closeness. It either happened too fast or felt like choreographed routine. One night during our conversation they decided to experiment with what Derek called, listening to the silence between notes, borrowing from his musical background. They sat facing each other, no words spoken, just focusing on breathing, heartbeat, slight shifts in posture. Slowly, Derek extended his hand, not abruptly but in rhythm with Lila's movements as if dancing without music. Lila responded by mirroring subtly. Their hands finally met halfway, then lingered, then moved apart gently like waves. This wasn't about forcing touch or scripting emotion. It was about tuning into each other's tempo and allowing connection to emerge naturally from that shared rhythm. The change after this simple exercise was palpable. Their physical intimacy began unfolding with less pressure and more attunement. a dance of give and take where both felt seen without words. Here's how you can try this out yourself. Find a quiet space with someone you trust, or even alone if you want to practice sensing your own internal rhythm first. Sit comfortably facing each other or a mirror if solo. Focus on breath and heartbeat without rushing thoughts or judgments. Start small movements, maybe rocking slightly side to side or lifting your hands slowly, and try matching speed intuitively rather than planning moves ahead. If with another person, allow your movements to respond rather than initiate forcefully. Notice when timing feels off or right, without intellectualizing, just sensing bodily impulses. If alone, observe how your body naturally sways or pulses when relaxed fully. Try placing one hand over heart while moving other gently in sync with breath cycles. This exercise cultivates sensitivity toward rhythms underlying all exchanges, offering a fresh way to approach touch as dialogue instead of monologue where timing matters as much as technique or intent. Now, reflecting on these layers, the conscious breath inviting presence, slow proximity dismantling defenses, anticipation stirring imagination, rhythm weaving seamless flow. They might seem distinct initially but actually interlace deeply, forming a tapestry of authentic connection grounded not in performance but mutual attunement. It makes me think how often we reduce touch to mechanical acts stripped of context. A quick hug goodbye. Autopilot pats on shoulder, leaving us craving something more substantial beneath surface gestures. Yet these practices invite us back into contact with something profoundly human. Vulnerability dancing with courage. Desire shaped by patience. Closeness emerging from respect for boundaries both visible and invisible. Perhaps that explains why some touches leave us wanting more, not because they're flashy or intense, but because they honor the whole person beyond physical presence, including fears and hopes silently carried beneath skin waiting for recognition. If you're still here reading, or listening, maybe this invites you to rethink touch, not merely as action but as relationship opening spaces where self meets other through subtle language our bodies speak fluently once invited intentionally rather than rushed impulsively. And yes, I understand how intimidating this can feel sometimes, as if learning a new language without dictionary where mistakes aren't just embarrassing but potentially painful emotionally. But isn't that what makes it real? The willingness to stumble toward deeper understanding despite uncertainty? To close this reflection, I want you to imagine a moment where touch transforms from duty into desire, not due to external stimuli but arising organically because inner rhythms align perfectly, creating resonance beyond words. A moment where reaching out is not just physical act but profound statement saying, I choose you here now, free from masks or expectations, raw and genuine. Maybe next time you pause before touching someone, or yourself, you remember these ideas playing quietly underneath everyday life, reminding that every connection offers invitation not only outwardly but inwardly too, toward fuller presence, embracing complexity of human longing tenderly yet boldly. Before signing off, consider practicing that rhythm awareness exercise tonight wherever you are, even if alone, because tuning into yourself better equips you for authentic encounters when they come unexpectedly amid chaos. Modern life often throws our way, relentlessly demanding speed over depth. And hey, if any part of this resonates with your experience or sparks curiosity, don't hesitate sharing below. I'm genuinely curious about how these subtle shifts manifest differently for each unique journey, seeking closeness beyond surface interactions often taken for granted or overlooked entirely these days. So here's leaving you not with neat answers but open invitations, to breathe fully before touch, to honor pace over rush, to awaken imagination through anticipation, and finally to listen deeply for rhythm guiding your steps toward others, connecting body, mind, heart, seamlessly echoing something timeless beneath fleeting moments. Because maybe after all, that simple question we started with about why some touches call out louder than others can find its truest answer not in explanation but in lived experience, felt deeply through every breath held softly before fingers meet skin, yearning not just for sensation but communion between souls speaking silently. Take care out there, and remember, sometimes the most powerful connections happen quietly between beats, waiting patiently until invited forth by presence courageous enough simply to be.